Welcome, everybody. We're here with Trumpfeller for another dialogue, and this is a really interesting one about primary water. And you'll find out why it's so interesting, because none of the science that we have these days is really talking about it, knows about it, teaching about it. And we have infinite water available for us. So Sue's going to go in to all kinds of details on that. And let me just give her bio here for a minute. So she is a student of alchemy, dowsing, color, and energies and water. And she's been a dowser for over 50 years and author of books on pendulums, dowsing, color, and poetry. She's a coach, teacher, and she has been working with me on our website, our Facebook page, Virtual Rain Dancers. So we could build a community. Let's see, so we could a safe, effective water, so we can build safe water systems around the world, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a collection.
Oh, it just, I started to review it yesterday, and after 3 hours, I was only half through. It just goes on and on, but it's so much interesting information about the Native Americans and their dances, and about how back in the day they, there was that one guy, remember, he the farmers would hire him and he was paid by the hour and guaranteed it would rain. There was, and that was in the papers, right? It wasn't it in the San Diego paper and the Sacramento paper or something. I mean, it was like the farmers accepted it as truth. And so there was so much stuff. So this is going to be a really interesting one, but it's like vital energy that we really need. And we're at the end, we'll go through the virtual rain dancers. One of the problems, Sue, I saw is someone else has made another virtual rain dancer site.
On Facebook?
On Facebook. So they put, ours is virtual rain dancers, and they did virtual and then rain dancers together.
Oh.
And it's totally different stuff. So you'll know when you get to ours. Ours will be about primary water, Native Americans, droughts, all of this. All kinds of different things. So, okay, let me, so how would you like to start? Do you want to just start talking? And just, you can tell me when to put up the shares, when you want any picture to be put up.
Well, I guess where I will start is there's like three sources of water. One is this, which is what most people know as a source of water, and that's groundwater. You know, the rain, the lakes, the rivers, the streams. That's
hydrological cycles. Right. Yeah.
The other that we're going to talk about today, let me get this backed up, is primary water. And primary water grows inside the earth. I don't know how else. It forms deep inside the earth. Mm-hmm. And then there's a third water, which I named pirate water.
Oh,
and the reason I did that was that the pirates, or ships at sea, can go in the ocean and they can find spaces that this primary water really comes up in the ocean. So they can detect the difference between the salt water and the fresh water. And that's how they could stay at sea so many hours, days, years, was because they had a source of fresh water. There's some off the coast of Oceanside. There's pirate ships or shipwrecks that my friends have told me were because they were trying to access the pirate water that
So
came up.
are there deep sea divers over there looking?
There were, Carol is no longer with us, but he was telling me stories about how they found all these ships along Oceanside. And there was a gentleman in the dowsing chapter, Orange County Dowsers chapter. I'm in Carol and I are both in California. And Howard had dowsed the whole coast of California and discovered all the underground water.
Wow.
That comes out. I've got an article that he wrote, and it comes out and goes into the ocean. And he said there's a big lake in San Marcos, which is what, 45 miles south of me. And so there's all this source of water. And the interesting thing is I'm 30 miles from Lake Elsinore.
Okay.
And Lake Elsinore dried up, and they hired 2 dowsers. Vern Cameron was the primary dowser.
Right.
And they tapped into the primary water source in Lake Elsinore. And his first well brought in 5,500 gallons a minute.
Wow.
He did 2 more wells, each brought in 2,000 gallons a minute. And since the early 50s, that lake has been restored or maintained because of the primary water that, that these gentlemen brought in. So there's a lot of underground water around me. The water district that serves me, a source of our water is from 2 wells and some Colorado River water, but we have 2 wells and one of them's right out my back gate.
So Sue is in Southern California, just for people
Right.
watching that.
Yeah, I'm near Palm Springs.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all this water that is just there to be brought up. And if Lake Elsinore is still a working lake, shall we say, today because of what Vern Cameron did so many years ago.
Wow. He was amazing. Didn't he find, he doused the whole water system for Bangkok.
Oh, that I couldn't find.
Yeah, he did. And then someplace in South America, because he's so successful when he went in and did their whole water system. I mean, he was amazing.
He was amazing. And if you know anything, he had the Cameron Orometer was a device that he developed, which is extremely sensitive dowsing tool.
In fact, look.
Well, it's interesting.
Just moved and she said, "Oh, do you want this thing?"
Oh,
and it's the Orometer. And she just moved and I went, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah, I bought one years ago.
Hold them, they're very, I'm not gonna go into that now, but when you said that, I just thought I just got another one.
Yeah, it's really a sensitive tool for whatever you're looking for, but primarily water. Ted Graycheck, who lives up near Santa Cruz, is a water dowser. And he did a valley near him, and the people down in the valley he got 4 or 5 gallons a minute. Well, the family that lived at the far end of the valley wanted him to douse a water well for them, and so the water source that he found was up the quote mountain, and so he drilled it. And there was so much water in that well that he set up a water system, a water company, and he's providing water for the whole quote neighborhood.
Wow.
There was so much, I can't remember what the gallons per minute are, but that was it's most people don't douse up a mountain looking for
Well,
water.
it was interesting. I remember Stephen Rice, Reese, do you know how you say
Yeah.
it? Reese?
Yeah,
Like he had talked about that, whatever, that mountains have shallower floor beds. You know, the floor bed is shallower, so it's easier in a mountain to hit primary water. I remember that. And people always thought it went against the great, like you're saying, against the grain of
yeah.
reality.
And what we're taught is not what's true. And what's sad is that 2 years ago, we had lots and lots of rain and all the reservoirs were filled and there was enough water in the reservoirs for 5 years. And they have decided to drain those reservoirs because of some endangered species. So it really has put the California water system under great stress.
There's a political decision. Wow.
And the Klamath River, they've shut down all the water sources for the farmers. So, you know, that's really bad. So
Isn't there a law that you were supposed to, with those reservoirs, the water was supposed to stay for 5 years or something?
yeah,
like that?
that's what it was. Karen.
And they went over that?
Yeah,
Wow.
they don't pay. It doesn't seem to be any rules. What they did with the Klamath River was they shut all the farmers along the river off from their source of river water. It's amazing, but if people knew more about the primary water, they wouldn't be under such stress. Now, Pat Delafield dowsed for primary water when she was hired. That's but what I found is most dowsers that are looking for water only are using groundwater.
Yeah, most of these people that we've known through the years through dowsing have passed. And,
right.
The new ones aren't really getting into primary water.
Yeah. Now, I never had this conversation with Carl Bracey or Joan McFarland, but they were the ones that sat me down one evening and said, okay, Sue, find the wells on different people's properties. Now, I've never had the opportunity to douse a well, but I was able to find existing wells on the property. So that was fun. Going back in history, General Patton was a dowser. And when he was in North Africa, they didn't have water. And so he sent some of the troops to go find him a tree. And then he dowsed and he got water for the troops in North Africa and saved lots of lives. Yeah. And he's got a museum out here on, what is it, 25 miles east of Indio. There's a patent.
I think it's on the 10, isn't it?
It's probably on the 10, yeah. And there's a museum, a patent museum. And in there, they'll tell you that he was a dowser. They have records of all that. And so he was quite an interesting man. He was very much in support of his troops. Yeah. But there's, I've read lots of books on water. One of the ones is Victor Schauberger, and he was a forest ranger in Austria. And so he observed the rivers and the streams, and there's a great book about him. Well, he's wrote 6 or 7 books, of which I've read all, but there's one that's a translation because, you know, he was German, Austrian, whatever language they spoke. And so if you really wanted just a little brief on Victor Schauberger's, the book is called Living Water by Olaf Alexanderson. It's really give you a real good hint on what he did. But one of the things that caught my eye was that he talked about the flow of a stream, and he calls it the yin yang of the stream. So if you think of the downstream flow, but he said the salmon and all the other fish that are going upstream are flowing in on the upstream flow. So there's a downstream flow and an upstream flow of all rivers. You know, so he really
He
knew
solved that whole thing about the salmon jumping and all of that. He was
all that.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was very much into water energy, and he was implosion. One of the other things that I remember that he talked about was the farmers, and he was noticing the difference between the German farmers and the gypsy farmers.
Mhm.
And when he investigated, he found out that the gypsy farmers were tilling their soil with copper instruments or wooden instruments.
Mhm.
And the Germans and the Austrians were plowing with metal instruments, and that broke the bond of the soil.
Mhm.
So but I'll tell you, I've tried to find some copper tools and stuff, and
Very expensive.
and it's always in England or Germany that you
Mhm.
can get them, but I haven't found any here. I had a friend that was in northern Michigan at Copper Harbor, and I said, find me some copper tools, and he didn't. There just isn't any. But that's interesting when you think about the structure of the soil. And
Mhm.
we're a little off water here.
And
but
then I think he also said that the iron rusted,
yes,
you
yes.
know, yeah.
Yeah, and so it just broke the bond in the soil and made such a difference in
Mhm.
the crops that he witnessed as he was working with the with the water and with the farms. And he had some really phenomenal ideas. So I recommend you look up Victor Schauberger.
There's so much lost knowledge by all of these Native Americans, the gypsies, our ancestors. So much of it we've just forgotten. Yeah.
When I was living in Arizona, and I went to a farm group, and some of the Navajos and Hopis came, and permaculture was big on, there was a permaculture development on Hopi reservation. And they would come to these meetings and they would talk about their digging tools, and they were just wooden sticks. But that's what they would use was to maintain their crops. So that's, yeah, it was
way beyond that now with these big tractors and caterpillars.
I know, but what are they doing? Yeah,
You know,
what are they
compacting
doing
the
to the
soil.
soil? Yeah, and one of the resources, well, Carol and I started virtual rain dancers about 5 years ago. And I think it was about the time of Standing Rock too.
Yeah.
And we were going in California, we had a big drought time. So we were working on ceremony and tools to increase the rain and increase our water supply. And so it was interesting to watch the Standing Rock challenges, I'll say, because there were many. But one of the resources that you will find, besides what Carol and I have collected in the virtual rain dancers, is on a website called primarywater.org. And on there you will hear an hour-long description. The gentleman takes you through this picture and describes the formation of primary water and how it moves through and up and through and over and comes up sometimes in spring, sometimes they even talk about volcanoes. So if you want really deep information on primary water, and they also suggest a book called New Water for a Thirsty World.
Mhm.
And that book is also on that site. I've downloaded it. It downloaded in small
Do they
print.
still have the Primary Water Institute? Is that still around?
I think it is.
Hmm.
Some of those things disappear, Carol.
I know, that's why I was like looking at different, well, I was just yesterday going around and I couldn't just know whether it still existed or,
Yeah, well, that's why I'm
I
so,
mean, there's money in water when it's scarce, so, you know.
well, now it's selling on the stock market. They're selling.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's really, to me, scary.
Mhm.
But the reason that we and all the articles that I've discovered, Carol's discovered over the years, is on virtual rain dancers. Is some of it's about turning salt water to drinking water. You know, all the different places or places and people around the world that have created collection spots to, you know, catch the water from the air and all that. It's a great database for anybody exploring water.
Yeah, we're researching this week. We're going to archive it because when you go to look for some of those articles, they're just not there anymore. So we really need to
right,
get it
right.
together.
And I've copied some of them. You know, they're just because they're treasures.
Mhm, mhm.
In water's so essential, and it isn't given its due. Is
Mhm.
that what I want to say? The respect.
I read something yesterday. It said Benjamin Franklin said, when the well goes dry, then we'll know how important water is.
Yeah, right.
Even back then, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Robert Kennedy Jr. has had for years, excuse me, the Hudson River. And so he's got a nonprofit that he started, and it's cleaning up the rivers,
Mm.
the Hudson River and all the rivers in New York and along in New England. They've had great results with cleaning up the rivers. And so he has what an association called River Keepers, and they report people that are dumping things in the rivers.
Mhm.
It's not a sewer system, and I think that's the part that really bothers me, is the disrespect that water has is given from all the yeah, they just think it's the sewer. And
Right.
so all these big manufacturing companies just, oh, well, we can just put it in the river. And that's why there's so many, well, like look at Flint, Michigan.
Mhm.
You know, the disrespect for the people in Flint and their quality of their water is, well, it's all the kids are sick and
Right.
having mental issues and all that. So, but the primary water is, I've posted a few things on Facebook and gotten comments back and saying, you know, well, it's so expensive to drill. But when you think of drilling for primary water, or any water, but primary water particularly, is so much cheaper than bringing it, you know, through the Colorado River and through the reservoirs and all that.
Mhm.
if you
Plus,
could,
it's so more pure. I mean, all of that is you transport water anywhere. It's all, all of the pollution and everything. It's going through all of that.
right,
I had read one place that tritium, the way they can distinguish when you drill a well, whether it's primary water or from the hydrological is you test for tritium, because all the water that's on on the earth from above has been exposed to it and carries it.
yeah, well, that the quality of primary water is far exceeds what you get in drilling a groundwater well, because it hasn't been exposed to all the pollutants in the air. Yeah. And as Vern Cameron found, the source of water doesn't dry up. My friends in Arizona that I lived with for a year have a well, primary water. They might be tapping into a lake, but anyhow, they have 750 gallons a minute in their well. And they grow crops. So, here we are in the quote in the middle of the desert. And there's water available.
Well, I know that Steve Reese, when he got hired by what was his name, Prince Faisal from Saudi Arabia, and he went and said there's so much water in the desert. When he looked around, he said Saudi Arabia in the mountains is just loaded with water. Yeah.
I had Pat dowsing area in Mexico that was on the Bay of what's the Bay of California, between Baja and Mexico, that. And she found 100 gallons a minute in a water source there.
Wow.
But it's like, okay, we have a poor community, and who pays for drilling it? So
that's true. Where you want to get this, it's like, because you've got to go deep on this.
Yes,
You've got to go through the bedrock, I think, is
the
whole
and so
thing.
it isn't a cheap well drilling project. But if you have the money and the resource to do that, it's the best source of water.
Well, they said like along the Rhine, there's like different wells, and they've been going since 900 AD.
Yeah.
I mean, the water just flowing for the whole communities all the way down. Yeah.
Right.
All primary water.
All primary water. Yeah. Was it Stephen Reese and who else was the other guy? And they drilled a lot. If you read that book, New Water for a Thirsty World, they talk about all the wells that they drilled around Southern California that provided communities with water. I probably should go down to my water district and see what the well is. I haven't checked it out, but I know it's just right across the street.
Right. Well, I know, like, just from research we did during all of this when we started the whole thing with the drought with the in Joshua Tree, because I always was going there at the Integriton, which George Van Tassel built, that incredible place, and their water, everybody would always bring, jugs to take their water back, and you could just freely load it. And then I found out through the groundskeeper, because I couldn't find this anywhere written about, but there's 3 rivers that cross.
Yes, I was with you that day.
Oh, well, there you go. There've been so many times. But anyhow, the whole thing is that I'm sure that that's primary water, that those rivers are being fed, you know what I mean? And it's so clean and perfect. And so you have all these people coming to the Integriton, and of course they're dowsing it for its spirituality and its energy, and it just they all see it like, great,
Yeah. Yeah. So water shows up in what I say, unusual places.
Mm-hmm.
Well, according to what we've been taught in our education system, water only exists if you can tap into that underground stream or that river, and use it that way. And it's not so. Many scientists just poo-poo the thought of primary water. They just, and when you, and that's why I called it pirate water. I've never gone into the ocean and looked for a source of fresh water, but obviously those pirates knew how to stay at sea.
Right. I mean, this whole thing is like it because of the heat in the earth, it's like it comes up as steam, right?
Yeah.
And then it goes with all the metals and minerals and carrying it up with it.
Well, one thing that came up for me, Carol, recently was we have
there's a Zoom. Okay.
There's a lot of, I live on the San Jacinto earthquake fault.
Okay.
On the other side of the mountain, the San Jacinto Mountains, is the San Andreas. But we've had a lot of 1.6 earthquakes over all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm questioning if that isn't when primary water is formed, Carol. When you think about it's all that action deep down into the earth, they always tell you how deep the earthquake was. And I think that a lot of primary water is formed in that, in those earthquake, when we have those little earthquakes. Well,
last year, I think it was last year, there was like an earthquake up north above San Francisco. What is that, San Jose or something? And then all the people were so puzzled because this water was forming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was so perfect, right? Because they're going, where's it coming from?
Well, and another source, and I'm not sure what the source of the water is, but I know that people who have built labyrinths had to be careful. I heard one girl complaining when I was in Vermont that she built her labyrinth too close to her house and she had water in her basement.
Oh, wow.
And then I've talked to Sig Lundgren and Alex Champion, and when they in England, they've built labyrinths and they're always dowsing water, is there water in this area? I mean, that's just who these guys are. And
I remember hearing back when we were in Vermont that there was this Hawaiian island that had no water, and they hired someone to make a labyrinth on it and walked it and brought water. Do you remember any of that?
I don't remember that story, but
we better research that one.
Yes, Alex told me one that when they were traveling in England and they ran across the labyrinth, it obviously had not been walked in a long time. And so they and there was a group of them, I don't remember how many, and they got out and they walked the labyrinth many times. And they had dowsed before they walked it, and then dowsed a few days later, and water came into that area around the labyrinth.
Yeah. So there's proof.
Yeah. But the woman who had water in her basement was a good story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, be careful where you put your labyrinth.
Sue and I have worked on different labyrinths because Sue's really good at dowsing them out. We've done them at different big ones at different places. So
yeah, I always
probably inadvertently brought them water.
Yeah. Well, I used to have a class every the middle of June and the middle of December every year, because I lived in Capistrano Beach. And so we would go down and build the beach labyrinth down there. Well, what was fun was after we walked away from the labyrinth was the seagulls. And the seagulls would come and sit along the sides of the mount. We did mounted labyrinths.
Mhm.
But when we were there, they would fly and they'd come to the labyrinth and they'd part and fly around it. So,
Wow, that's neat.
yeah, but I didn't need to bring any water to the Pacific Ocean, so I never did that one. But you know, if you're in tough straits, you know, there's things that you can do to find water. And I think that's what we've done with virtual rain dancers, Carol, is showed as many as I've seen, water, ways of retrieving or capturing water is on that site. You know, in different parts of the world, they had a big contest for who could get the most water collection and whatever. Well, one of them was from Israel. It's in production now, called Water Gen, GEN. And they're in production and creating water for others around the world. Yeah. Because the Navajos, Navajos mostly are really in tough shape about their water because of the uranium.
Right, so polluted.
It's so polluted. So
Yeah, we also, I remember there were some of these guys in Africa, and they made contraptions where then they would get, it would evaporate off, you know, and they would get their water for, I just thought of that one. Yeah, and they were so inexpensive to make. Yeah,
they were like, I'll call it mosquito netting and something, and it'd catch the water and then they drip down. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you want me to put up the picture of the primary water?
You can.
The one you sent me, or do you want to go through that or not? I didn't know.
Well, I think this is the one you're talking about?
Yeah, I can put it up on the screen if you want.
Okay.
Or I don't know.
Well, the man, if you go to primarywater.org, I believe that's where the hour-long recording is. And he talks you right through every.
Oh, so that's a good one. Yeah.
That's a really good one.
And then it's so visual. Yeah.
Right. And he takes each section of the picture that I just showed and describes what's happening within the earth. I can't remember it all. But he had.
So this was someone who worked with Steve Rice?
You know, I don't know who the commentator was on that site, but on that site is lots of resources for water. You know, different people doing different things. There's a couple of other websites. One's primarywater something or other.org, and you'll find that on this.
It would be worth it for like some of these corporations, to do the primary water, because it's such clear, clean water.
Right.
I mean, it just blows anything away that's coming from above, you know, this water.
Right.
And some of it's thousands of years old. It's just working, you know, its way up, and it lasts forever. I mean, you just like, so it seems it would be good investments is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
For people to be doing.
Well, Mr. Culligan Water Company, he also was a dowser, and he dowsed the whole West Coast for all the underground water. Mike Joffrey had the book, and I never did see the book, but he was amazed at all the work that Mr. Culligan did in dowsing the water along the coast. Where I live is on top of a big lake. That's my dowsing sense, is there's water underneath where I'm living. Yeah.
Well, you know, this when you're talking about this site, the primary water site, the person who found it, the institute, the Steve Reese. When I had talked about Prince Faisal, he also was brought to Israel by what's his name, Ben Gurion. And he brought him over, and he said nobody was to to do anything, to leave them alone, uses it because everybody doesn't like that method. They all think it's wrong, right? And so, and he did incredible work with the River Jordan. There was a whole, and they said it was
okay.
written up all over the world. It was like miraculous. Yeah. So that's all of that stuff happened by these guys that where Sue's talking about the Tri-Berry Water site. That's the people.
Yeah. Well, if you read that book that Michael Saltzman wrote, was written in the 60s, but he goes back to all the different wells that they Reese dug, and it's amazing. I mean, I feel like I'm living in the middle of all the wells, you know, with Lake Elsinore down the road. And early on, we found somebody from a newspaper article we found that of the wells that this man in San Diego was locating. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I remember back with the Steve Reese, like when he was talking about like when, because he was born in, I don't know, turn of the century, 1900, around there.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, and then he had, when he was a teenager, he was looking at these wells along the Rhine, and he was just fascinated with all this. And then he started doing all of this, but nobody was accepting it, right? And it was so interesting. It went back to this professor, like really started working with him. I forgot from where, but this professor found out that this Swedish guy in the 20s and 30s who was up for the Nobel Prize for his North Pole work had done the same, started looking for primary water. And he had done 17 different wells in Sweden and different islands for the lighthouses. And so when this professor is giving his class, because nobody knows this, there's 2 Norwegian kids in the room, and they say, wait, somebody was doing that. Then they bring the text and they translate it, and it's everything that Reese was doing. So that's so interesting because everybody was so against, you know, what he was doing.
Well, it gets poo-pooed by geologists and stuff. They take their tools and whatever. Well, even people that douse for water get poo-pooed by the geologists and whatever. They say, oh, there can't be water there.
Well, they just did, Rob, they just, he was like featured in the New York Times about the dowsing for water now, right? What's Rob's last name?
Thompson.
Rob Thompson, yeah.
And
I saw
Sharon
that.
Hope.
That was like a month or so ago. It was like featured in the New York Times.
Yeah, his biggest client base, when I heard him speak in Santa Cruz, was the vineyards.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because that's, I mean, you know, they need to have their water. And so, but one of the things that Carol and I set out to do when we developed virtual rain dancers was to bring in rain, you know, talk the spirit of the water and help bring in rain, because it's like what we're suffering from now is lack of water, and the drying out of the orchards, and the farmers are having cut back on, they're taking out almond trees and all these other trees because they only have enough water for, you know.
Well, you know, it's the chemtrails too. I mean, all that aluminum that was never there since 1980, there was never any freeform aluminum. And now, you know, they go to the top of Mount Shasta, and these geologists they're finding like, you know, 400 times at the top of Mount Shasta the amount of aluminum. So, you know, they're questioning, if you don't believe in the chemtrails and that, but it's coming from somewhere. It's in the water, it's in the land, and aluminum dries out the air.
I think it was Shasta County, the Board of Supervisors. Do you remember that video from years ago
We've got
Where-
that on the, on Facebook, the link.
Yeah. And they allowed testimony from, I don't remember, but they brought in doctors, they brought in geologists, they brought in chemists, they brought in all these people, and they testified before the Board of Supervisors and say, you've got to stop these chemtrails.
Mhm.
And they all had done their research.
Yeah,
they
and the
knew what
forest
they-
rangers were, I mean, everybody.
Yes, it was a phenomenal presentation.
Mhm.
And they were effective in that. But, we've got some forest fires that are burning right now that we could use some rain for.
Exactly.
And then, yeah, well, I used to watch the jet stream,
Mhm.
as it comes down from Alaska and all that, and how it comes across the country. Well, years ago, it used to come down where I'm living.
Mhm.
I lived in Orange County, and then where I am in Riverside County. And so you could see the way the water moved, the rain moved. And in the last few years that I was watching it, I don't know where that program went, but it doesn't even get to Northern California, the jet stream. If you're really observing the water
Mhm.
as it comes across, it's been monkeyed with as far as I'm concerned.
So,
And
but
that's
we
the
can
simple
all
thing.
I mean, the point of virtual rain dancers that Sue and I thought, we can all work on this because everybody's working on manifesting this, manifesting that. And I think the most important thing we could be manifesting these days is rain,
Yes.
and
Well, and to know there's a source of water that isn't being acknowledged.
mhm.
I don't know whether it's being sold out, suppressed. I don't know. I get suspicious these days. I have I'm
Okay,
puzzled.
well, like to kind of round this out, there was a lot of information here. Can you just talk a little bit about Reich and his cloudbusters? Just, kind of just what they were.
Oh yeah, he set up a device and I heard him speak in Orange County.
Mm.
No, not Reich. Who's the other guy that did the cloudbusters that lived in Long Beach? He showed up and he had these 3 pipes on top of his car.
Yeah.
And so he could create orgone. Is that
Argon
what?
energy, right.
Orgone energy and create rain. And he was in Hawaii for a long time and they were flying airplanes.
Oh, I know. Trevor Constable.
Trevor, that's
He
right.
wrote one of my favorite books. Okay.
Yes, and
I had
Trevor.
it on my website for a while. Yeah, he was
Yeah, and
amazing.
Trevor, I heard him talking, and when he showed up for the meeting to speak, he had those 3 pipes on the top of his car. He's passed on now, but
Yeah.
a friend of mine did some of those orgone generator to create rain, and it scared him. It created too much rain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But,
there's
Trevor tried to get the US, all the different agencies, like to go with, to work with them. And he ended up just only place he could get anyone to work with them is Taiwan. So he went over and he was doing that and flying the airplanes and it was very successful there.
He was very successful in creating the rains. But again, he was poo-pooed.
Yeah, no, I mean, but
there's been
it's like if you go like to Taiwan and then they're all seeing all of this, his money is where his mouth is.
Yeah.
But we don't even give these people a chance.
No, they don't. It's and it's so vital. And when I saw that it was going to be on this, they're selling, I don't know how, shares on of water on the internet, I mean, on stock market, I cringed. Because we have a lot of unethical companies that are stealing water up
Could we
in the
say
mountains.
Nestle's?
What?
Could we say Nestle's?
Yes.
How they're pumping it out, thousands every day?
Out of
Gallons.
just north of me, up by Big Bear.
Yeah.
They're there, and they don't have any permits. They pay like well, maybe they have a permit, but they pay like $20 a year for
No,
it.
they had it in the newspaper in April. They got a cease and desist. But
Yep.
it hasn't been enforced. They're still just pumping daily.
Right, right. And the other place, because it's near and dear to my heart, was Michigan. And they're doing the same thing of stealing the waters, the Osabo River and Michigan. And they're pumping water from Michigan and bringing it into cargo ships and taking it someplace else.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad, the theft of water that's going on. And so I think that's one of the things, there are virtual rain dancers, we really wanted to protect the water.
Yeah. So I think this is a good time. What I did is I copied our about us from Facebook.
Oh,
So-
yes. Okay.
So to end this, I was going to, read, this is like our goal, what we wanted. And it's so interesting. It was 5 years ago. So when I'm reading this, it's talking about it's the biggest drought ever. And now we're at a bigger drought. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So our call was, we're calling together a group of like-minded explorers to form a virtual network to address the drought from many unique angles. We'll also be addressing rain, primary water, and pollution solutions. Each of us will focus on the virtual rain dancers network to bring harmony and balance to the weather and water systems across the globe. Some of us will be focusing on California because it's the food basket of the United States and it's experiencing the worst drought of its history. We have found that devas have been programmed with all of the wrong intentions, profit, greed, competition, etc. But our focus is to reprogram them with light, color, shape, and frequencies with intention. Some may choose to do this through ritual, dance, sound, patterns, and we're looking forward to include the work of Reich and Trevor Constable. I forgot that.
Yeah.
One tool you may want to use is a picture of the Integratron in Joshua Tree. It is a multiple wave oscillator they've discovered, sitting on top of 3 sacred rivers. There are many additional tools, sites, and methods you can integrate into this project. We're creating a virtual rain dancers email account and private Facebook page to keep you informed and share any insights you may discover. So our whole thing is, like anything you're doing, to just come on and share with everybody so we can get a whole database of all this information and what works and what doesn't. We feel it's vitally important for you to watch, oh, here we go, the Shasta County Council Board meeting concerning the problems brought on by the constant spraying of particulates in our air. And then we have the link, and then we have another link for the book you're talking about, the New Water for a Thirsty World. And then we have the link also to the graphic you're talking about for primary water. And so if you have any more resources, experience, or information pertaining to our project, we'd love for you to share it. And we look forward to creating a meaningful community that has a common goal. So the email is virtualraindancers@gmail.com. So.
And if you're on Facebook, you can go and get access to all of them. I've been sending out invitations for people to join. And I think I've gotten 5 within the last month that joined. And people are saying thanks for building this community. So
Mhm.
we've kind of been,
Once you get somebody there and they start reading, because it's so eclectic. I mean, I loved we've got the whole thing, how they even do the native rain dances
mhm. Yeah.
from different tribes and things. So, well, Sue, it was so great having you. This is how we talk every week. And anyhow, but the water is so important, and I want to thank you. You had lots of good information, and we'll see all of you at the next one next Thursday. So bye for now. Thank you.